I always do jazz hands for our editor.
Oh, nice. I like it. Jazz hands.
Right? Jazz hands. Hi, welcome back to the Unique Minds of the Okanagan. I'm Robb O'Day, and we are on location in Penticton with the incredibly amazing Yanti.
Oh, thank you.
How are you doing?
Today I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's a beautiful day in the Okanagan. I love it when the sun is out. It's just starting to be spring, and there's that, you can just feel the warmth coming in. And I love this time of year.
It is. The drive out here was incredibly beautiful,
Yeah.
watching the mountains. Mm-hmm. Let's start off by introducing who you are, where you're from, and how you got into being Yanti
Okay.
as an artist.
Well, I guess I should go back to the beginning.
Yes.
My indigenous elders here in the Silk people of the Okanagan have taught me how to introduce myself with who am I, or where am I from? Squeeze is how they pronounce that. Okay. That's my best pronunciation of it. I'm terrible at that, but I'm learning. So Squeeze, it means where are you? Where are you from, really? And so my father is long time, generations and generations from England. And my grandmother, grandfather, the whole family is from England. And that's where I was born. My dad moved to Canada with my grandparents when he was 5, so just after World War II, and they settled in Ontario. My dad learned how to play piano. His father was an Anglican minister, so my dad learned music in the church. My mom's family is all from Singapore, and their whole family has been split. Each of the relationships have had to cross great boundaries of culture and religion to be with each other. My mom was grown up Islamic, and my father is grown up Anglican, as I said. So they had to come together through all the religious strife to be together. And so then I was born in England, and we actually moved to Texas instead of coming back to Canada, as my dad kind of thought. So I was born as a Canadian citizen, but then moved to Texas. And we lived in Houston for a long time. I mean, the music was very, of course, everybody was in music lessons. You had to be in lessons. And so that's sort of, piano lessons. I played the cello. In fact, I played the cello all through university as well. And in my grade 12 year, we won a trip to New York City and got to play in Carnegie Hall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's actually the picture of us. I'm way in the back playing cello. And so we got a chance. So that was kind of my intro to music, is my dad playing piano. I kind of had lessons, and then I got to have this incredible experience. And all the way along, I sort of, was in choirs. I was very nervous to play by myself, either cello or singing. And so I just sort of I loved it, but I wasn't a performer at that time. Fast forward through my 20s, and then my 25th year, I moved to Canada. At that point, I thought, I need to get out of there. And the whole time in Houston, there was never any thought of me being a musician ever, because that's not lucrative. That's not, that would not be a career that I felt like I was allowed to have. But when I came to Canada, and then shortly after that started my family, I started singing again, just, to myself and, around friends and things like that. And then it was Renee Matheson, Craig Henderson, and Christy Lind, who were instrumental in getting me my first gig. So they had not heard me sing other than in the car, la la la, Craig was my boss at the coffee shop. So, and they decided that they were going to book me a Valentine's gig. Now, this was 20 years ago, this last February, just a few weeks ago. So I didn't know any jazz. Like, I knew a couple of jazz standards, like, Fly Me to the Moon, or like Bye Bye Blackbird, or something like that. And so they wanted me to fill an evening jazz music
with a handful of songs.
Yeah. So I called up the local piano teacher, who is Christy Lind, and she was like, "Sure, let's have an audition." She didn't know me.
Yeah.
And so she sat down at the piano and played a couple of songs. She was like, "Oh, yes, I think this will work." So that was the beginnings. And so we learned 13 songs, and we played them twice.
Wow. Well, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right?
It was a great start. It was safe in that there were only 15, there would have been an even number. There were probably 9 tables only in the little coffee shop. So it felt like really safe and out in rural BC. Like it didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on the stage in Houston. It just felt littler and safer. And so I loved it. And then from there, I sang karaoke, started doing that at the pub when I was I went from the coffee shop and started working at the pub. So I sang karaoke there and just developing my voice a little bit more, singing what I could do, with different songs. And then when my kids were tiny, I learned to play the ukulele. So I went to a really amazing full music immersion 1-week camp in the summer, jam camp. So jamcamp.org, if you get a chance to check it out.
I will check it out. That's awesome.
So I highly recommend it. It was so fun for my kids. So the kids go off they have lots of instructors. So the kids go off and do their own thing. And then the adults can, like, whatever instrument they're offering. So that year they happen to offer ukulele. So I learned, and I borrowed a ukulele, and I like the whole time I was in the passenger seat, obviously not driving, but the whole time from Nelson back to the Okanagan, I was playing just chords, and luckily the kids, how many songs are the same 3 chords, right? Yeah. So we sang, Baa Baa Black Sheep and ABCs and all the little kids songs and, Itsy Bitsy Spider. Yeah. And I'm learning to my chord transitions the whole time. That sent me into a whole wave of being able to accompany myself. That's always been the issue, is that I don't have the budget to really have an accompanist, on staff, right? Yeah. Like how do you do that? So the ukulele provided a freedom for me to be able to just sing whenever I wanted to. I could just pick up my instrument, and it's 4 strings. So very, very much like the cello is 4 strings. I really enjoy the 4 strings instrument. Yeah. I have 4 fingers, right? When you start getting 6 strings and 4 fingers, now I'm confused. So I kept it really easy, and that Christmas I learned, starting in September, somebody asked me if I would play and sing for a fundraiser for the preschool, and so the challenge was set. And so from September until December, I worked on Christmas music, and I had 20 songs that I could play slowly, but I could play them and sing them. And we raised, a couple $100 for the preschool for the Christmas market. And I was hooked. I just was like, oh, this is what I want. I love singing. So I'd find all kinds of different places to sing. People would always call me and just, hey, would you like to? All fundraisers always, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was working down at the inn. So I went from the coffee shop to the pen, and they had Thursday Night Live music, like jazzy music. And so I got to serve listening to that. And this one guy, Don Wade of Sax Among Friends, not a great, I know.
It was a wicked name.
Yeah, don't misspell that. he and his group were playing down at the inn, and he's a really personable guy, and he likes to know everything about everybody. So he sussed me out, and he's like, oh, and somebody said, oh, you know, she can sing. And he's like, oh. So when they took a break, and I had a break, and we figured out one song, Satin Doll, what it was, that we knew that they had in the book. So I went up and sang with them. And the next day, he comes to my work, and he hands me 12 more songs. Hey, can you learn these? And then the next week I had to take the night off to go sing with them.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. So that was the beginning of me and my Don Wade Diva training program. So he had a show for every month of the year, a different 12 jazz standard songs, grouping of songs. And we'd go into the retirement homes. So we'd hit all the retirement homes once with the, February set list. And then the next month was March, and we did a whole different, and stories of March and whatever, April, all the April songs, and all the way through the year. And so in 1 year, I learned 144 jazz standards.
Wow. And
played them at the retirement homes.
Say, how many times did you play those songs?
Yeah, well,
there's quite a few retirement homes.
Probably about six retirement homes a month.
Wow.
Is what we did. And so I got a chance to rehearse them 6 times of captive audience who loved us. They loved they still love what we did, right? So that got me really into the jazz scene and around here with all the wineries, and it goes really well. So, but of course that didn't satisfy what I wanted to do. I have lots of creative vibes, and started writing music. Me and my kids started writing music. So then it was the Super Cooligans. I was in this kids band, and we had original songs, and so we played for kids, and that was really fun. And then it was a blues band, the SoCo Blues Crew, and then it was the Justin Glibbery Quintet, so a few different groups were like, hey, vocalist in the Okanagan, join us, right? And and in those early days, that's when you and I met, in the early days, and I saw you we were on the same gig. It was like
I can't remember which one it was.
It was in the winter, and it was at the Shafford Center way back when, and I remember seeing your crew, and I was like, man, I can understand your rapping was like exquisite. I could hear and understand every word you said. It was awesome. And so then we got together and got to you wrote some hooks for your songs, and I came and recorded that. And that was the first time I was in a recording studio.
Oh, crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Behind the door.
Yep. Back in my home studio. So funny.
Home studio.
Yeah.
And so I really just wanted to stay in that as best as I can. So raising the kids, trying to have a solid side hustle in music, performing here, there, and everywhere. And then of course and then I found out about these song circles that were happening all over the world. This is the Ubuntu Choir Network. And they're the Dennis Donnelly and Siobhan Robinson were putting on these community choir leadership training courses out in Victoria. So I took 2 weeks, and it's the only time I've ever really had training like that. Like this kind of training. It was amazing. For 2 weeks, like from 8 in the morning to like 9 at night.
Oh, wow.
It was intense for 2 weeks, just music immersion, and learned how to lead a group of people in song. I like the short song. I call it song catching. So I like the short songs. So I throw out the songs into the circle, with my voice, and I teach them, and then everybody sings them. We sing it together. Yeah. So we probably sing about 15 songs a week, each hour session. So I've got a group called Song Catchers, and that for me has been the number one best practice for me. Weekly, I get to go and sing and work my voice, and we work sometimes to the extremes so that our comfort zone just goes like this. And vibing with other people is so incredible. Like, it's one thing to, play. I play often by myself, and as you can probably imagine, like, it's nice, it's fun, you have total control of whatever the tempo is or what you're doing. But at the same time, I find that the point of music is to be together, right? So this, to me, the Song Circle, the Song Catching group, has been so beneficial to so many people who may not have had such an easy time with music. Growing up, I was encouraged. But many people I've come to discover have been greatly discouraged from doing music. It's not going to be a career. What are you wasting your time for? You can't sing. Oh my God. The number of 60-plus-year-old people who come to me with these stories of, my grade 1 teacher told me I couldn't sing, and they never did.
Never did again, yeah.
Until now. And I'm like, yay for now, but like, you just missed out your whole life of being able to
enjoying
sing.
Something.
And Rob, I really believe that singing is the most beneficial for our bodies. This is a instrument that we have been given. We all got it, and to be able to hone that instrument is so important to, I think, the vibrations of your body and your cells. It's on the inside.
Yeah.
And the most unique thing is that we can't touch it. We can't feel it. We can't see it. We can feel it. That's the only way that we can know what we're doing, is we feel it. And it's so vulnerable. You're like, oh my God, people can see inside my mouth.
That's probably like the last thing I'm thinking about when I'm on stage, which is funny. I've never thought of that before.
There are a lot of people that think about that. I have one student singer. She has a hard time. She wants to sing like this. Like, like.
Oh, because she wants to cover her mouth.
She
so people
just
can't stand it.
Right. It's so like, this is not a very efficient way of singing.
Yeah, that's funny. That's definitely a weird concept, because not a lot of people talk about that. But the fact that you're not supported as like a child, it is a very reoccurring pattern that you hear. That's, it's not a valid career choice and things like that. And I think that it doesn't have to be a valid career choice to enjoy it or to be able to make it successful. You just have to enjoy it and love it and believe in yourself.
It is super confidence building, for sure. And yeah, to make a career out of it, this much of the, like, no.
Yeah.
And when I recognized that, and that I could just do this in my community, and, people here have heard of me. You go one step outside of my community, and nobody knows who I am. But that's okay.
Hard, right? Yeah.
But I for me, it's not about that. Yeah. I want to create joy through music wherever I go. And in this community, this is the community I've chosen to live. I'm so happy just to stay here. Like, I don't need to. Sure, it might be fun to win a Juno one day.
Right. I think it's doable. I think you have the skills. I think you just need to. We need a Yanti band. Yanti and it's not a band where you're just being a singer. It's your band. I think that's where it would happen.
Thank you. There's another group that I'm fronting called the Crawford and Crosley. We just had a concert in Summerland. Oh, nice. Larry Crawford is a legend in the area. He is a horn player of all kinds. He's also 88 years old.
I've heard the name before.
Yeah.
That's why it caught me off guard. I haven't heard it in a long time.
Way back when, he was like the only local that got to play at the Dream Cafe. I remember seeing his name on a poster and being like, oh, they do let locals play here. And so he and Alan Crosley have written these incredible songs. They are so complex and beautiful, and I would put them in the jazz genre.
Okay.
We might be trying to win a Juno for that one, but I'm just the vocalist in that one. I haven't created any of the songs, but I am happy to be the vocalist on that.
Is just as valuable.
I did write a letter to Dolly Parton.
Yeah, you did.
Dolly is listening. For my project. So during the COVID, which of course we had 35 people in my song catching groups coming to a gallery, and we were singing together. And so things were really looking up for me in music. I had a contract with a school district to go and teach ukulele and voice to like all the kids.
Wow.
So I was about to be really busy right before the shutdown in March, that fateful year. So I was doing one of these, and then COVID hit, and then it was like, I fell into such a depression not because we couldn't see, like that was a bummer, we couldn't see each other, but for me it was like, if you sing, you will kill people.
Right. It was a very weird time for me.
It was a very weird time. And so, of course, I didn't want to kill anybody, so I really, shut my voice down. It was really hard, right?
Yeah.
But what I did was that was hard, like trying to figure out what I was going to do for work. And so I jumped into house cleaning and landscaping, right? And then the winter, of course, landscaping is, you don't work in the winter. I didn't do snow removal. And so, so what I did was I cocooned in this house, and I wrote an album.
Yeah, you did. That's awesome.
A whole album of songs. And the reason why I wrote to Dolly Parton is because they're kind of country.
Nice.
Like I've been like ukulele acoustic and jazz and blues, rock and roll, and this was, I don't know if it's my Texas roots, but like it all came out country.
That's awesome though, because I mean you touch on every genre. Like you're mainly jazz and blues, but I mean you've opened up for Mercules, who is one of the biggest hip hop artists in the world now. Yeah. And we got to share the stage with him, and it's
we did.
To see the difference in your musical genres just kind of shows your diversity as not just a singer but as a musician, because you don't just sing, you play instruments as well. You teach instruments. I think that you have taken your career as a musician in a different way that led it to be a viable thing, because most people are worried about performing and touring and recording, but you dove into the community, which is one reason we really wanted to sit down, is because it's based around community. And if we're not inspiring the next generation to pick up an instrument, what are we doing? We're not doing what we were meant to do. Because if we weren't inspired by the musicians who inspired us to be where we are today, it would never continue. It's just the chain breaks unless you're inspiring youth. And I think that that's a very valuable thing that you do within the community that is kind of, it's better, makes you a better person than going on tour. Like those musicians who make it and want to be famous and go on tour. It's like you're giving back with everything you do, not just individual shows or we do a fundraiser here and there. Like every show you're doing is for community, you know what I mean? So it kind of separates you puts you in a different realm than most other local musicians, I think. Thanks.
It definitely grounds me that I have kids, right? We may not be talking the same if I would, I can't tour. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to bring them and I'm not going to leave them. So that's been the blessing actually, is to be able to open up in a different way. I love kids, and I want to make sure that the next generation, like you said, has some, can go forward in confidence. Sometimes when you grow up with, and music's not in your household, it seems really unattainable. Mm-hmm. And so I bring in, through ukulele and voice, I bring in this element of, we're all human. All of us make mistakes. Even the best of us make mistakes. And you might have to suck at this for a little bit before but patience, and talk to your fingers nicely. Like, don't, like, why am I not getting it?
Yeah.
I remember that Sesame Street character, the piano player is like, tries to get, and then, oh, God, and he just bangs his head on the piano. And I used to think to myself, like, oh my gosh, this is what we do. This is what we do to ourselves. Like, how we rake ourselves over the coals because we make mistakes, and it's like, but we're human. We're supposed to, right? However, are you going to learn if you don't really mess it up first, right?
Well, if somebody didn't build a square tire, we would never have found the round tire.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You got to make mistakes, and I think that's kind of why I love artists and creative people. Is who else do you know has failed more and still has a smile on their face other than artists? Mm-hmm. Most people can't accept defeat, but I've had to accept defeat for over 20 years being a guitar player.
Yeah. And in time, right? Like, we have to forgive ourselves in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, and pretend like we didn't do that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, not pretend, but like, you try to keep a poker face or whatever it is. But that's the thing, is that I always tell the kids, like, your favorite musicians have had to forgive themselves so many more times than anybody else, right? Like, and in the moment, and giving the kids an opportunity. Like, I just finished teaching Naramata Elementary School an 8-week program of ukulele, and to see them at first, it's usually this. But the first lesson's usually really fun, something new. The second lesson, okay. By the third lesson, they're like, oh my God, are we doing this again? I'm like, okay, this is the work. Mm-hmm. This is like, you might still be confused about where your fingers go. It's okay. I'm going to keep talking to you about it from this way and that way. Sometimes we we use colors. Sometimes we use, like, this is the battleship, and we're playing battleship, right, on a grid. And to see them, by the time we get to week 8, they put in the work, and the last class we get to play, some 2-chord, 3-chord songs that they know. This year is Best Day of My Life, American authors, and it's a 2-chord wonder, and they are like, they don't even realize they're counting 8 beats. At the same time they're singing, at the same time they're playing. They've got polyrhythms happening in their bodies all at the same time, and they can do it. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is fun. We get to play, and because so many kids have to work music for so long, years and years and years before they get to the play part. But if we as teachers can, like, give them those little nuggets of, like, what it feels like to play, they'll just keep on coming back.
It's true.
Yeah.
Even if they're not playing. For example, my kids decided, we have little drum kits and fake guitars at home, and they decided to sit us down and have a show.
Yep. Oh, great.
They don't know anything of what they're doing, but the moment that you cheer for them and they realize, oh, I just did something that was amazing, I want to keep doing it, they become hooked. And I think that giving those kids the sense of, you have to work for something to achieve, is, like, very valuable lesson, especially because you're doing it with music. It's multitasking. So you're also teaching them to be very skillful in skill sets that are going to be valuable down the road, not just as a musician. So it is, I think it's more beneficial that you're doing that with children. At what ages are you doing that?
So my favorite ages to start teaching is grade 4 or 5.
Okay.
In this little school, it was 2, 3, 4, 5. And it was interesting because the grade 2, 3 kids, they have a little bit more problem with like the physical pressing of the strings. I mean, we do finger workouts and those kinds of fun little things. But they totally got it. Like they were starting to catch on, you know, pretty well actually. And then the grade 4 or 5s there, it's usually the attention issues, right? Like, can we be done yet? And you know, that kind of stuff. But they got 4 chords, you know, in 8 weeks, and the G chords are not easy sometimes for these kids. So it was really amazing. Now, the really cool thing I'm doing with kids that I love is with the Penticton Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, located in the Lear House.
Okay.
I have started coaching bands.
Nice.
So what we've done is we've put a call out to all the teachers and students who wants to be in a band, and then we put them together. So they're taking private lessons, and then for plus a little bit more, they can be in a band. So then they're learning how to haul equipment. They're learning how to put their microphones together in the stands and all the things, you know. The drummer's learning that he's got to arrive half an hour early.
More than half hour.
Right? You know, to set up. And then we've got a cellist for a bass player, you know, and the ukulele player and who sings. And of course the lead singer runs in, you know, 5 minutes before the downbeat, and you know, and I make their start class, there's the start time for the class is the downbeat.
Okay.
So we do a warm-up song, but so if you're scurrying in, you've missed the show, right?
Yeah.
Like you missed the beginning. So time, like learning how to deal with time and manage themselves. We're doing the naming the band, you know. So
I love that.
So they're like, so far we've gotten things that they don't want to name their band. Nothing with the something, like no.
All the greatest bands have the.
I know. They're like, this is their rebellion. I'm like, yeah.
It's got to be 3 syllables, or 3 words, or 1 word.
Or
you
one
can't
word.
have 2.
You can't have 2 words.
No, it doesn't work.
And then nothing to do with food. They've decided. They're
That's
like,
awesome.
nothing. And I'm like, okay, great. So far, we've named the band, one of the bands, Nameless. That's what they've come up with. I'm like, okay, cool, Nameless. But it's really neat for them. Like already, they're in 1 semester. Their musicianship has gone from here to here because they're like, oh, this is why I'm practicing to play with each other. And they've, you know, that group is doing cover tunes, you know. But you know, the drummer's learning to work things out. And, oh, this is the verse, this is the chorus, this is how it, you know, this is what I'm doing differently in the bridge. This is how we're gonna end. Like who's counting us in, you know, like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then there's another group that we're doing songwriting. So the guitarist, she's an amazing songwriter. The bass player is this bananas bass player, like he's incredible. And piano player and a guitarist, and they're learning how to take a song that they don't know. Like at least with the other group, they can hear the song and try to emulate. But this is like, you've never heard the song because we're just creating it now.
Yeah.
You know, and how do we make it sound like this? How do we make it this way? You know, like what do we do? And so I'm just guiding them through their own practice and teaching them how to talk with each other in a band.
Yeah, as
right?
musicians. Mm-hmm. That's so cool.
It's amazing just because it really is taking these kids who are just in their own, you know, private lessons. You practice, you don't practice. Oh, you're still going.
Yeah, lessons and playing are 2 different things.
Yeah. So this is a great idea, a great opportunity for them to get together and really hash out some songs, you know. How do you want to create this sound, you know?
That's so cool.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Do you guys plan on bringing in bands to give them like experience, like if they want to like tour or the business end of things and how to actually properly manage a band in that aspect? That'd be a cool thing to teach because those are the hardest. That right there, if you want to be a successful musician, understanding the business behind it. It has nothing to do with, you can be terrible at playing and singing and still be a hell of a business person, and you'll make it. And that's where I think I went wrong for 13, 14, 15 years, was not looking at it as a business or just, I hate to say that, because it's,
I know, right?
As a musician, it's for the music, but to be able to make the music and have the time to make the music, you have to do it as a job, because if you're spending 8 hours plus a day doing something you don't love, you're drained, you don't have the energy to be inspired.
Yes.
So it's very difficult to find that middle ground, or just say, I'm going full bore, I'm going to do what it takes, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where you touched on earlier, where it's not a viable job, where parents tend to say that it is. You can definitely make money off of doing this and still love it. And you're proof. Like, you don't have to go on tour. You don't have to sell millions of albums. You can teach it. You can educate. You can inspire. And that is just as valuable as standing on a stage in front of millions of people.
It's very fulfilling. I definitely hear you on the business side of things. I am needing your course in, in music business.
It's hard. It changes constantly.
Well, it does. And the other thing is that, I mean, with this whole, the business of music, recording and touring and all of that is a different business than, of course, what I'm in. It's very much gig economy. And if I don't put information out, or I don't email, oh, hey, it's me again.
Yeah.
Do you have any work for me, right? Like, I'm always having to prove my worth. And, you know, I'm 20 years into this, and I feel quite blessed and lucky to be able to do what I do. I mean, I work hard for it, but I also get to also, right? Grateful. And, but it still is like, you know, when new restaurants have new management or new coffee shop, you know, like, and it's like, okay, hi, I'm Yanti. I've played there before. And you want me there, right? Like, how do I say, like, can you please hire?
Being able to sell yourself is very hard.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, and I don't know if this if this is badly affects you, but it badly affects me, that musicians haven't gone with the times of, like, inflation. You know, whereas our grocery prices are however many times, but our wages are still 100. Like, we're still playing for $100
or based on door. Yeah, you definitely deal with that, and I think guarantees are, unless you've kind of hit a specific point in being known, guarantees are very hard to do. We've been asked to, like, for example, we were asked to play at a festival 16 hours away for an hour performance. And what it took me was to calculate how much time, gas, accommodation, all of that came into the bill. It wasn't just the hour of playing. It was, you're taking 16 hours from 5 guys who work full-time in construction and have kids. So what is the value on that? And there was a number. If they didn't want the number, we didn't play.
Yeah.
And I think that the worst case is no. That's all they can say is, oh, we're not going to pay that. Okay, well, then you don't get me. Go find someone else. It's not being cocky or rude. It's, you know, your value, and it's also your time.
Darling, I'm priceless.
Yeah, right? Like, it is very hard. And that's like, and I think one thing in the Okanagan too is, we were talking about this with Harley, is a lack of venues for, like, rock bands and stuff. But because there's so many wineries, you have also a way better option, a chance to get seen and heard, versus, like, Kelowna has Denenzi's, which is a pizza shop that has, I think, hosts 80 people max.
Oh, okay.
So it's very small. And Jackknife, which I think can hold 100 people, maybe a couple more. But they're both pizza places. Like, there's no venues in Kelowna for rock or metal or hip hop. There's one venue, which is a club, which is also kind of hard to get into, because you have to be established as a musician or as an artist. But Penticton is it's one thing I've always loved about Penticton, which is also what kind of draws me to hosting shows here constantly 20 years later, is that there's always one venue that is willing to be the oddball out and host that. And luckily we have 2 right now, which is the Hub and Clancy's.
Yes.
And they're both being incredible. It would be nice to see these other, like the wineries. Like I understand it's a richer crowd and like they're sophisticated, but, or breweries, like, yeah, but open your doors to other genres and see what might potentially happen. I know a lot of beer is sold at metal shows, and there's a lot of breweries that could use that right now.
Well, the Cannery Backyard is that's a great venue, and they have a whole backyard.
I forgot about the Cannery.
Yeah, they have a nice backyard, and then right next door is Highway 97, and they have
I always mix those 2 up. That's what
it is. They're just right next door to each other. They're going to be part of the Ignite the Arts Festival as well coming up. That's going to be a great festival as well. I'm doing a few things for that, and that's really neat. That's where a lot of the kids, like my students, all of them are going to get wristbands, and they to be able to see people do their passion. And these are people who are musicians. They don't have other, like a lot of them don't have other day jobs, right? They get to be musicians through, Factor grants or TELUS STORYHIVE grant, whatever. Like they have lots of different avenues for grant money. And a lot of them don't have kids.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, Creative BC is what I think is one of the top. Factor, Creative BC, and the Arts Council of BC have a lot of opportunities, but there's a lot of holes to jump through, and people get scared with grants.
I still haven't written a successful grant yet.
It's
right? Like
not easy.
I just don't. It seems like the skills that you need to be a musician and to write songs and to be creative are different than the skills to get hired, and those are not necessarily like. Sometimes they're mutually exclusive, right? Like, for me, that if I'm constantly thinking about how am I going to get paid for this or whatever, and that is sometimes shackling the creative process, But you're right; it is really nice when venues will take a chance. The Legacy Den is a smaller venue for sure, but they've been trying to have music.
Where's that?
It's right on Main Street in Penticton. It used to be the Hat Hideaway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they've done some really cool things. At the Ignite the Arts Fest, they are the electronic music. So they have some. I mean,
one of my
gets
buddies is
pretty
playing. He's
bizarre.
DJ Thistle will be performing at Ignite the Arts. They just announced, and he's amazing. Cool. One of the best artists in the Okanagan. I love that guy.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like what Paul and Julie and everybody behind Ignite the Arts is doing, because the amount of talent that is hiding in the Okanagan it's mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. And it's almost heartbreaking that the amount of musicians that we've had that are extremely talented that have ended up stopping or just giving up because it's hard to get out of the Okanagan. And bringing in a festival that is blowing it up, the local acts, because there's a lot of names on there that I grew up with, which is really cool to see, or that we've seen perform for forever. To be exposed to in a different light and where the city is expected, like it's not like it's a little offshoot anymore. It's not like this little scene that we have, like the Hog's Breath days. Like I always bring up the Hog's Breath days, but it's now the Hog's Breath crowd is now this entire festival creation. Like all the great minds and all the amazing people that are behind it. Kind of, it's inspiring to see, because growing up in Penticton, and there wasn't a lot of art. There was, but not in the sense where it was like a huge community, everybody working together. It was very small pockets, working against each other, or somewhat working together, but different venues instead of working together and creating something giant.
It's a giant.
It is huge. The entire town becomes a festival.
It's incredible. And for the whole week. So
Yeah.
starting with the locals weekend at the Ignite the Arts Walk. So that's the March 22nd. And then for that whole week, there's tons of stuff, little things going on that are showcasing locals. Like, it's really fantastic. And then that whole weekend of the Ignite the Arts is, I mean, it's so cool that it's multi-generational. You can just park at a venue of your favorite venue, and just every sort of 45 minutes, a new amazing artist comes through. Or I think it's hilarious to see people, they get the map out with all the people, and they're like, oh, we want to go here and here and here, and they're just running down the street to the next venue. It's so fun.
Right? I want to see the behind the scenes.
It's really...
I want to watch the stage managers. That's what, like, I'm like, I want to watch how well, because I know it's done well. And to keep that many artists on track is not easy.
Well, they have a lot of... There's one thing that Penticton does have lots of is volunteers. There's a group called Kids Fest. Kids Fest. Actually, I think that it's pronounced Kids Fest. And they're doing a lot with volunteerism, and they're teaching people how to be good volunteers and what kind of skills you need, and this is how to deal with people that might be uncomfortable or a little bit grumpy or whatever it is, and so they're giving people skills to be able to volunteer, and so they've created this great big opportunity, volunteer opportunity, but then that also spills over onto everybody else. So the Ignite the Arts has lots of volunteers. They put them at each of the stages, the different stages, and sort of teach them a little bit about this is how to make sure the sound is whatever happens, and it's a collaboration, a huge city-wide collaboration with the venues, and I am over the moon that it continues, and despite all of the red tape headaches of all the business side of things, right, that they still keep doing it. They have a vision, and they're just like, we're not gonna stop, because they've got this great momentum, and it really is like, it's really snowballing, and it's amazing to see that our tiny little Penticton town is creating this big buzz, and about music. Yeah,
and I think that's, there is so many, like I said earlier, there's so much hidden talent. Jeremy Head, for example. If Jeremy Head could get seen by the world, his music and him, he would blow up.
I just saw
a video. But he's always hiding.
Yeah.
It's because he's local, and I watched Jeremy since, like, I've idolized Jeremy as an artist for years. The music he writes is still to this day gives me goosebumps. And like Samos, I believe it is one of the most beautifully written songs on the planet. And it's by a guy in Penticton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just one person. There's so many other amazing artists, and they've all worked together, and it's just kind of funny to see, like, these super groups, Penticton super groups, as I like to call them, where they just, like, continue to write with, and it would be cool. It's nice to see them finally getting, I guess, the exposure they deserve, because they were just coffee shop artists and musicians for the longest time, and now they're getting, and that's what I mean. It's nice to see them getting that that light that they deserve, because they're amazing.
Imagine with me that somehow these billions of dollars that are just hoarded away from the community get trickled down actually into the community. I would love to see musicians and artists get some kind of universal income. Like, if we start, I think everybody, it would be really nice if we all could, but like, if you started with artists and musicians, because we're already doing it for nothing, right? But if you gave us what we needed to pay rent and food and gas money, you'd change the you change the entire landscape of what's happening in the world, right? Artists and musicians, we're already working so hard for no matter,
No matter what, we're always going to be.
But if our needs were met and we had support that way, that we didn't have to keep like always asking for more, can you give me more? Can I have more? We're worth more, we would just do it. And it doesn't matter if you have money for us or not. We already have money.
It's definitely, I think I think there is actually countries that do that, where they pay musicians because they're entertainers.
Yes, France is one of them.
Yeah, and I want to say there's a place in the States that is actually paying to bring, I want to say it's Detroit. After the big decline of Detroit and they had nothing, they're paying artists to move to Detroit so that they can turn Detroit into a arts capital. Which is one thing. My friend Chantel lives down there right now. She's from Penticton, lives in Detroit as a pinup model. So she gets to go to all the lowrider shows, and I'm like, that's so cool. I wish we had a lowrider culture here, like so badly.
Yeah.
But I think there are places that do treat musicians as valuable things that are needed because you need entertainment. Like, our actors, the one thing I can't stand is how much actors get paid. And I've done acting and I've dealt with it, but it's not, they show up on set, they gotta memorize a couple lines, and then they get to walk away. They're not carrying in their gear. They're not driving all the hours. They're not the ones booking the actual performances. Like, that's all managers and agents for them doing that. So musicians should definitely get a little more credibility for the amount of work they have to put in. And I think that this is like another thing that Harley was saying in her last interview was the same thing you mentioned, that there's a lot of philanthropists in the area that could be doing amazing things. And it's always, you just need that one person to push and like somebody to buy, like what I was saying to him, is the Shatford building. Turn the auditorium into just strictly for bands, all ages, because that's the one thing we need, is an all ages venue in the Okanagan. No one needs another bar. We need to have all ages so that we can go play for a younger crowd and entertain them and their family, not just their parents at the bar and they have to stay home.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've been talking about for a long time, is all age venues for musicians, because the older I get, the less I want to play at a bar. You know what I mean? I don't want to be at a bar. I don't drink alcohol. I haven't for probably close to 10 years. So I don't really want to be around that. I would way rather be around, like, growing up, I used to hitchhike to Kelowna. Sounds really bad. 12-year-old hitchhiking to Kelowna. But my mom couldn't control me, so we'll leave it at that. I would hitchhike to Kelowna to go watch Stutterfly and Bleeding Alarm perform, or Glory Nights. And my favorite story till this day, and I spoke with Jordan during our interview in one of the documentaries, is I was hitchhiking to a Stutterfly show, and a white van pulled over in Summerland just after the last light in Summerland. Pulled over to the side of the road, and Jordan pops his head out, and there's the bass player from Stutterfly. The band that I was hitchhiking to go see picked me up, brought me to their show, didn't charge me door, and let me set up the show with them. So I actually got to set up their merch, got to watch them do their sound check. That day, like, I have goosebumps all over my arms right now. That day was the day that quite literally changed my life. Oh my God. And I've been chasing this ever since, and I'm still putting on shows. I'm going to be 35 this year, and I'm like, I've been doing this for almost 25 years. Yeah. Like, I've been performing since I was 11 at Voodoo's, open mics on Sunday nights. Like, the dream doesn't die just because you get old. And we've talked about this on the show before, that, like, one thing I've really clued into this year is age doesn't define anything. There are bands, like our drummer in Storm the Empire, for example. He is the same age as my mom. He's 18 years older than I am. And his band is doing, his other band, which is not as heavy, is doing incredible things and growing at a rapid rate. Nice. And he's like, both of them are like, well, we never thought we'd do this. Or like, we'd be continuing to do this at our age. There is no age limit. You can be any age and still make it famous. My favorite example is these two rappers from England called Boss and Pete, I believe. And they're like 87 something, like 90-year-old old guys rapping, and they are talented.
Nice.
And it's just like, I look at them and I'm like, yeah, I'm never giving up. There is no end to this. Like, unless I quite literally go doing it, like, I'm gonna be performing or at least involved in the music industry community, the Okanagan art scene, till the day I die. Like, I've tried to leave and I can't. There's just something that draws me back. It's Penticton is like, I can't live in Penticton, but everything I love to do is in Penticton. So I just live in Kelowna and travel because it's just so much easier.
It's,
right?
it's easy to travel around here for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I agree. I totally agree with you. I'm 49 years old and this year, and I can't imagine my life without pursuing music all the time. With you, I wish it were easier. I do feel like Patreon. Do you know this Patreon? Yep. So I'm kind of new to that idea, and I don't have anything on Patreon at the moment, but that idea of like going back to sponsorship, like people sponsoring, and a musician that they like, I love that.
There's a lot of that.
But there's also opportunity of like you could sponsor. What if you could sponsor a stage and like, oh, tonight's performance, thanks to.
That would be really cool.
Whoever, rich person, whatever has money, and instead of buying like tickets, this person is like, everybody come for the community event, and like win-win situation, right? I mean, I agree that hospitals are really important to donate to, but also music. Yeah. It's also medicine.
Yes, it is. And I think it just comes down to, it sounds really bad, but an importance scale. Like, obviously, hospitals and school and like those things are going to get funding from throughout philanthropists way before an all ages venue. But I think like the opportunity is there, especially in Penticton. Like Kelowna, I can't picture being able to sit down with city council and present that to them and have them be like, oh yeah, totally, we're going to give you an all ages venue. Penticton, I feel, is a little more reasonable, and you get them on a good day. They may run it by themselves, right? But they have rights to the best venue, and it's right beside the school. Like, all I picture is Shatford Building becomes an arts center. Kids get off school on the Friday. Bands are already loading in, and you can see it. They're going to hang out. They're going to run home, quickly do their homework or whatever they do, and come back out. They're somewhere safe. They're taken care of. There's security there. There's people watching out for them. It's better than them going out and beating each other up in the school field or drinking underage under a bridge. So, like, I was one of those kids growing up. I was a troublemaker. So, like, I'm like, I know how youth can be. Like, and we did that because we didn't have anything. Well, that's what I was going to say. If you had been, if I had a venue that I could have gone to, I would have not done anything bad, right? So if you give them that, and let's say, like, I had a meeting with, or a conversation with John Horgan about this during the pandemic. Was there's a lot of empty buildings that are owned by a government and city, and we're giving wet facilities and stuff. Like, why can't we just give an inspirations facility? Like, you want to keep them off the streets, give them somewhere to go. Yes. Like, we used to have street level, which was like, it's not the best, but I mean, it was like, that was the concept, was here's something for the youth that's safe. They don't have to worry about going to a bar because they can't get in. So, like, give them somewhere to go. Yeah. Like, we used to have arcades or water slides or like.
I know, and everybody's complaining that the kids are always like this, and I'm like, well, where do they go?
Yeah, there's nothing for them.
So another letter I wrote recently is to Sarah McLachlan to open, to collaborate with the Penticton School of Music and buy that blue church, the United Church on the corner there on the main street in Penticton. They already have tons of rooms ready for, like, the Penticton Academy of Music were busting at the seams. Like, there's more teachers and students than there's studios for.
Yeah.
If we and that church also has this incredible. There's your venue, right? And a beautiful stage and nice acoustics and great little green room around the back and entrances, exits. Like it flows nicely, and I did get a email back from her administrator saying, "Oh, Sarah loves the Okanagan, but we just
did
it somewhere else." And I was just like, "Whoa, right here!" Because even just in Penticton, it services, Summerland, Naramata, and OK Falls, and Oliver, and even Karamias. Like, people drive to do stuff in Penticton, and so I agree with you. And nice all ages. I get the super cooligans back up again,
right? And I think that's I really think that's what's lacking. And so over the years of doing these projects and being able to being blessed enough to interview musicians and Unleash the Archers was one of our first bands we got to, and they're one of the biggest metal bands out of Canada. Brittany Slays, the vocalist, that was one of the first things she said is all ages venues and be giving back to the youth and main big bands. Another thing that which she mentioned, which would be a very valuable thing for the SOEC community to do is when they get offered one of these big shows. Yeah, totally. But can we have a local act open? Right?
Yes, please.
Make it part of that contract. We have to have a local act open. You have your touring acts, but open it up an extra hour early and have a local act open because you're going to bring in a lot more of the community if there's somebody locally known playing for these bands than just the touring acts. They sell tickets, but imagine if your favorite local band was opening up for Killswitch Engaged at SOEC, right? That would make the town, the way people would look at the town versus all the rest of the Okanagan or BC towns. It would put us on the map way above everything else because Prospera isn't getting those shows anymore. It's all Penticton. They're getting the big shows, and I was saying this in our last interview, a lot of the biggest acts out of the Okanagan tend to be heavy, sadly, but it is a true case. Three of the biggest DJs in the world are from Kelowna, 4 of them, sorry. And then you have the metal bands that come out of Kelowna that are just massive and huge. And clearly metal sells at the SOEC. You know what I mean? Most metal bands keep coming back and more are coming. So the local area does love its heavy music. So kind of embrace that as much as you've embraced the wine culture and the singer-songwriters. If you're just picking and choosing which parts of your arts community you want to support, you're not really supporting the arts community. You're supporting your little pockets of friends or your little niche thing because DJs, for example, like you said, there's a venue for the Ignite the Arts that's strictly electronic. Why are there no electronic venues?
I know.
Why are they forced to go play in the woods at raves and then have this bad, negative look out, it's a drug culture? Well, no, it's just you're not allowing them indoors. You're not giving them a place to be able to play, so they have to renegade these stages. And clearly, if there's no security and no one in charge, you're going to have things happen. So,
I agree.
That's where the Habitat, or not the Habitat, in Ham City in Kelowna, they host electronic shows.
Oh, nice.
Strictly electronic shows, and they're safe, and they're wicked environments. And I think that just branching out and accepting that the Okanagan has such a diverse arts community, and specific pockets may not be as well received by some crowds, but it doesn't mean they're not as talented.
Well, I mean, it is. I think every genre could say that same thing. I think a lot of genres could say that same thing. I think the reason why a lot of singer-songwriters are emerging, I mean, I know that's I'm a solo act singing my original songs normally. And the reason why is because there's only money for one, right? I envision my band actually being 6 of us. but nobody has money to bring in 6 of us for a concert. I used to do it all the time where I would beg my friends to come play with me for $100, and the venue would be, like, or 50, like a pitiful amount of money. But then I would I'd get the venue to provide food for us.
Yeah.
So then it was like, okay, maybe we'll just call it a paid practice. Well, that's not satisfactory either, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we want to perform, but that's all we could do, because the venues, they have their own fine line between, like, do we sell lots of alcohol? Do we food? And some people just want to come for the song, so they have their little cup of coffee and then watch the free show. There's so many people don't understand that it doesn't pay for it. Like, you can't pay for stuff like that, So that's why these, like, single singer-songwriters show up everywhere, is because they can afford one person. I do the formula of, it's, again, pitiful, but, like, could you just find at least $200 for each of the musicians? And it's like, no, you can't. Okay, right? Like, then it's just me, And so that's a tough thing to have to contend with all the time, and it is creating this this culture of just having one person out there playing, and it's way better when you have your group. You got everybody taking care of their own little bit. I hate it when people are like, we'd love a dance band, but we can only afford 2 of you. And I'm like, what kind of dance are you wanting to do? Because if you want just the drummer and the bass player, then there's no vocalist, right? Like, how do you negotiate? Like, where do you go with that?
I think the downfall. I think what really, it's the venue choices. Mm-hmm. We're choosing bars and we're choosing restaurants because that's what we have. Mm-hmm. Clearly, their focus is sales. They're not really worried about entertainment, and that's where I'm like, we need venues. Like, you go to Vancouver, you got the Commodore Ballroom, you've got Fortune, you've got Cobalt. Like, there's like, they're bars, but they are venues.
Well, the Dream Cafe is an amazing venue, but again, here lies the problem, is that they are seen as like the venue in the Okanagan, but then they also have to do their own fundraiser because they can't afford to keep their, like, hard. Every so often, like, the Dream Cafe, we're going to lose the Dream Cafe if we don't like pay attention. It's like, we go to restaurants, we go to even the grocery store has music, right? And it's just background. Like, people are so used to background. I would love to have like a blackout of music. Like, you're like
all musicians, we're on strike.
Just like, what if for like 1 week
there was no music?
There's no music for 1 week. What would happen in people's lives? Like, I know people who they're avid music, audiences. Mm-hmm. I have lots of friends who are, I love it. There's one of my friends, Sarah, she comes to like all the shows I go to. Right? She takes video. She's my video person. She just can't help herself, right? She just loves to take video. But, I don't know. But it just seems so, why is it so difficult? Anyway, she and I have talked, if she were to have to like music is her life. Like, you can see her jamming out in her car when she, and if she had no music for a week, like, it would be so hard for her life. Like, you'd really, really miss it. And yet, right? We're so used to paying pennies. Yeah. Like, literally pennies. I blame that. What was that, Columbia House?
Oh, right, yeah.
Way back in I'm dating myself now. But the Columbia House, right? Like, you can get this many CDs and you're like, oh, super cheap, right? Yeah. And so we're used to paying nothing Like, you just turn on the radio, it's there.
Yeah.
Who's paying for it? It's not me, right? It's free music. And yet, where do you think this music comes from?
Yeah, it's a weird, that's the weird spiral of the industry itself, is how it's created, and it's kind of been designed that way, and since the dawn of time is never was made for musicians to get that upper hand, which is kind of a weird thing. But
It is a weird thing.
The independence movement has been very valuable in the sense that we don't have to rely on record labels or anything. Like, you can do it yourself and be very successful at it. You just have to go about it. You just have to look at it from the manager, business person perspective, which is really hard to put a value on yourself as an artist and then to stick to that because how badly you want to perform. But I think it's just, you got to stick to that. I'm not playing unless my value is there, because like, you know your value. Everybody does. You know, you're not going to go to a job interview and accept a lower wage. It's the same kind of a thing, right? Like, you were going to walk away from that interview whether or not, if they don't value you as a person too, right? People
don't realize though that, like, musicians, we don't have benefits. We're not putting money away in, for anything. Like, we're not putting money away for retirement. We don't have our, there's no medical, right?
The amount of,
and if you don't show up to your job, you don't get paid, right? There's no, like, sick days. You have to, if it's a day that you booked for a gig,
you're there.
You got to be there, right? Do whatever it takes. But then, when I say to people, oh, it's, $200, like I said, like $200 for a group, for per musician for a group, right? At least. And for people are like, oh my God, you're paying, it's just 2 hours. You're $100, like an hour? And I'm like, yeah, but how many, like...
what about the 4 hours of driving?
So on an invoice now, I put like plus one, like for each 1 hour that you want us to play, we're practicing 2 hours. So that's 4 hours of practice time. Plus, equipment rental. Plus, the all the pluses, right? And that's not even like the music lessons we had to take when we were kids, right? Like, we're not even paying back our parents for all that they did for us, right? That's just, and so to me, it's just like when people they just don't understand. And I had to talk to friends of mine about that. Like, I can't do that because that doesn't, like, that's not my day's work, right? And we can't do it for 8 hours a day. I mean, we could, if we could.
Oh yeah.
I'd play for 8 hours, no problem,
I would
right?
definitely if I could.
But where are you going to play for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? It's not like we're making...
I think Robb, do you know Robb McLaren?
Yeah.
I think Robb did that. He played, I can't remember what it was. I'd have to ask him. He played multiple shows in one day to try and, like, do that, and it was a really unique thing. Because it's very hard. Like, how are you supposed to perform, pack up, head to another venue, pack up, and do that for, like, the whole day? It's definitely difficult. So
I have a 5-hour gig coming up at the Ignite the Arts for the Arts Walk. I'm going to be in a parking lot right next to the Renee Matheson Fine Arts Gallery, like across from Pasta Factory. And like right there. Yeah. And so that I'm going to be there for 5 hours. That's awesome. Yeah. But we start with song catching, and I've got a couple of students coming in to put like my kids' bands are going to come and perform, and love it. Bring in my own band sort of at the last, and me and my ukulele somewhere in the middle. And but again, it's just like, there isn't 5 hours of wages for me to, it's just like, oh, you'll get tips. And I'm like, but nobody has cash anymore. Right? No. I gotta go buy yourself. No, I gotta go have a little tap thing, and then if they have any, trouble with that, I'm like, oh, let me just put down my instrument and come and help you with, Yeah, managers are very valuable in that sense. But then, like, if you can't even pay the musician, how are you going to pay a manager, too? That's the thing. Most managers will do it in... It's kind of like an agent
So like if they get you the gig, they take a percentage. So like they have to work if they want to make some money too, right? Which is kind of where it's at nowadays.
I know. It just feels like such a backward thing for, again, with the like, it's just universal income for artists and musicians. And I feel like we already have our hours logged.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I've got my 10,000 for sure. I can say that.
Totally.
It's definitely hard. Well, Yanti, I want to thank you for doing this. We've hit our time and some amazing points that I think a lot of people will enjoy.
I hope so.
I really appreciate you doing this and having me.
Thank you so much.
And we will talk to you again really soon.
I hope so.
And we will. We'll catch you guys next time.